Hello everybody, welcome to episode 52 of Show For You. Today we'll be going over episode 11 of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3, Part 1. Now this episode, it was a lovely episode. It was high, intense, action-packed, and the animation was phenomenal. So this episode actually does go over the entirety of the Reggie versus Megumi fight. Well, at least like the more actual like fight part of it. But yeah, so we go through it, and we start off the episode with a lot of, like, exposition, like, explanation of how Megumi's domain is working. And we progressively see this as Reggie and Megumi are fighting, and they're trying to finally, like, figure out, get the ropes, all that. And we see as Megumi kind of starts off, like, just boxing up Reggie in Chimera Shadow Garden. And as you're going around, we learn that Chimera Shadow Garden, how it works is that it enhances Megumi's powers by 120%, and it extends the abilities of his Shikigami, or his 10 Shadows. And we also see him actually break through a hollow wicker basket that Reggie tried to put up via just absolutely breaking it, because how his domain works is that it is enclosed since he used the walls of the gym they're in to fully close it off. However, it doesn't have a definitive hit or definitive kill attack. Therefore, Megumi could break through the hollow wicker basket, because if it didn't have that, then Reggie could have continued to hold the hollow wicker basket. But we see as it slowly goes on, and eventually Reggie is like deducing things out, and he's like, okay, why isn't Megumi using Max Elephant? Because if he uses Elephant Shikigami, then he could crush me, or he could get my papers wet via expulsion of water, and then I would be essentially incapacitated. So eventually he's like, okay, I deduced this down. So what he does is that he then brings in 3 cars, because he brought in these 3 cars because he came to the realization that Megumi could not use weighty things in his domain. Because when he does so, the weight of those items is put on him, since they are in his domain and they affect him. So when he was summoning his clones and his Shikigami, they didn't really affect him. Well, not his Shikigami, because like he had Demon Dog and stuff in there, so the smaller things didn't affect him. However, once Reggie spawns those 3 cards, we can see that he is put under the weight. And during all of this, Reggie is discussing with Megumi. He's like, yeah, I figured out how it puts all the weight on you, and you're under about 2.4 tons of weight at the moment. And we see as Megumi's kind of struggling right there, and then Reggie feels like he's won, but then Megumi spawns in Max Elephant on bro. And so they're both struggling to hold back the weight, because Max Elephant is stated to weigh between 3 and 6 ton. So, yeah. But, so they're both holding on to their weight, and we see as Reggie's his fibula ended up breaking, but we see as Megumi is undergoing 40 Gs of pressure, and 40 Gs is essentially just a force of gravity, or like not really gravity, but it's pressure which affects you. Yeah, it's gravity. I'm not a physicist, but yeah. So we see as Megumi's undergoing 40 Gs of pressure, and is forcing his body to naturally push the blood to the bottom of his body towards his feet and the legs. So Megumi cannot allow this to happen. So what he is doing is he's focusing his body in a lower position so his blood circulates more easily throughout, and he's amplifying his body with cursed energy so that his blood can continue to pump to his brain rather than pulling at the bottom of his body and killing him and causing him to become incapacitated. But yeah, so eventually we see this, and Reggie is discussing, he's like, I can't take this pressure for much longer, so he decides to try and pull out his trump card, which he ends up actually falling through Megumi's domain during this and sinking into like essentially the void that's underneath his domain. Eventually he gets sinking, and then he's like, okay, I can remove 2 of my cards and summon 1 of them back, so it will rise me up, because he can still give it a command as long as it does not disappear, but once he gives it a command, it'll eventually disappear. And so we see as he uses his contractual, well, he doesn't really use the contractual move there, but he uses the contractual technique. But he uses it, and he uses power, and it raises him up out of the liquid through the card, because he gave the command to rise and take him up. And then we see as Megumi is still chilling there, and suddenly Reggie ends up falling into the water. He suddenly disappears, and it seems as if Megumi has closed his domain, or he's been crushed beneath the weight. And this is not the case, though. Reggie is underwater. And this did work. This is how this happened, was Megumi ended up cutting out his domain, and therefore, due to the damage and all the stuff that was around, him and Reggie fell through a hole that had been broken into the roof. Like I said, all that was going on. And there's a pool beneath that, so we see as Megumi is holding on to Reggie, holding him down as he drags toward the bottom of the pool. And so we see as he eventually gets out of the pool, and him and Megumi are kind of in a face-off now. He presumes that Megumi can no longer summon his Shikigami, and Megumi knows that Reggie cannot use his contractual ability anymore because his receipts are wet, so he can't summon them in. Oh yeah, and I also forgot, before, the reason why Megumi ended up cutting his domain was because Reggie ended up summoning like a 40-ton house, and it was going to fall and hit the domain, which would then absolutely crush Megumi, but Megumi cut off the domain, this and this happened. But yeah, so they're outside the pool, and they're looking at each other, and they're discussing, and Reggie's like, yeah, I can't do this anymore, but you can't use your Shikigami, and Megumi's like, yeah, I can't use them. So they get to fight, and they get to boxing each other up, and then suddenly Demon Dog comes out of nowhere and like rips like Reggie's like shoulder off here. Like he rips off like a V portion right there. And yeah, we see as Reggie falls and is now defeated, and him and Megumi are briefly discussing. Megumi believes that he might have a relationship with Tengen, but Reggie reveals that no, he didn't have any relationship with Tengen nor Kenjaku. And that's that. So then after this, we see Reggie die. He ends up giving his points to Megumi, and Megumi goes off. So then we start to see, as Megumi goes to hunt down, I believe it's Kobani. No, Kobani is not the right one. It's, crap. Remy, that's her name, Remy. He ends up going to hunt down Remy, and we see the Scorpion girl, if I got the name wrong there. But he goes to hunt her down, and he's pursuing her. We see as him and Demon Dog eventually pull up on her, and she's talking about being scared of, well, not being scared of men and all that, but like presuming that men take care of all of her problems and stuff like that. And we see as eventually he prepares to kill her, but then he hears a voice, which is supposedly his sister, and she's like, don't kill her. So he goes off, falls asleep in an alleyway somewhere, and then Angel ends up descending on him to, I guess, heal him. But then we end up going to the Tokyo district, where we see as there are many very powerful sorcerers there, and they're all going about doing their thing, killing people. We see one who has 2 powerful Shikigami, one who can control the air, and we see the headcanon dude. His name's like Ryu. His name's Ryu, yeah. So we see Ryu in his headcanon. But yeah, we see eventually as Yuta ends up killing the 2 strong Shikigami dude, and that's really where this story ends for this episode. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and especially in the fight, like the fight between Reggie and Megumi, like, especially in the earlier parts where they're actually, like, duking it out before, like, the weight stuff ends up happening, it is insane animation. Like, it's, like, you know, like, peak One Piece animation. Like, when the fights are, like, good, it was like that for the entire fight. Like, it was phenomenal. It was a great episode. I loved it so much. I can't wait to see where episode 12 goes, because it is, I can't believe we only have 1 episode left, because, like, honestly, I feel like this season could have been, I know MAPPA employees are already way overworked, so I cannot blame them for not releasing a 24-episode season, but I would have loved to see a 24-episode season, because that would have been phenomenal. But, well, momentarily we will be. I just wish I was talking about, like, rather than having 2 parts, we just had 1 whole part that had 24 episodes, but that would have been a lot of work. So, yeah, I absolutely cannot wait to see what they do with episode 12, and how long we'll have to wait to get part 2 whenever that comes out. But yeah, that's all I really have to say for episode 52 of Show for Review. And all I really have to say about episode 11 of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3 Part 1. So thank you very much for watching.